Right. Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Podleaders. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got quite a few episodes going on now, so I'm really, really pleased to add my lovely next guest, Mark Lenahan. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks very much for having me, Rachel. I'm a long-time listener, so I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, I really appreciate it. So Mark very kindly popped up onto LinkedIn a bit of a myth-busting offer to assist anybody that didn't understand the airline industry lingo, which I jumped with both hands straight into a conversation with Mark, because although having worked in this industry for 20 years, there are acronyms coming out of our ears constantly. So I was so appreciative of that conversation. And off the back of that, I invited Mark to come and join us to run through his fabulous career. So all of our listeners are always really interested to listen and understand how we got to sit here today. So do you want to run us through how we are here today, Mark?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and give the short version. Obviously you can scroll down on my LinkedIn profile to see where I went to school. But I started in tech in 1989. I didn't have a college degree. I went straight from high school or secondary school, as you call it, into Irish Life Assurance as a software engineer. I did a Bachelor of Science in computer science as an evening course over 4 years in Trinity College. And then, we arrived in the mid 1990s. I got very bored with Dublin in that period. It would change radically in the following 6 years, but I had the itch to travel, and I met Bobby Healy and Michael Murphy in a hotel room where they were doing interviews, and they promised to say, "Well, join us and you'll see the world." And so that was my introduction into travel tech. They sent me to Peterborough. But, it gradually got more interesting than Peterborough. So it was, I started in agency desktop, working for a large TMC client, Amex GBT. I did a bit of work in their UK. Ultimately, the reason I was in Peterborough is when they acquired Thomson's business travel unit. There was a bit of work to move all of their stuff down to Brighton. And I was doing, I was thrown in the deep end. I was screen scraping Sabre and other GDSs and PNRs and things like that, and then putting things into databases or creating it was Windows 3.1, and I was creating graphical screens on top of that, along with a couple of other developers in the same company. So that kind of was very much on the agency side. Then, there was two of the partners of that company formed another company, which I joined. And then we were more into, rather than screen scraping and agent desktop development, we were into system integration and getting all these legacy systems to talk to new technology like XML and Corba. In that part of that business, I got more into airline IT, working with airline systems and connecting airline systems to modern digital systems like websites. And then eventually, they sold that company to CETA. So I worked in CETA for 2 years, doing the CETA integration platform. And I kind of consciously wanted to move up the stack into application logic and what would later be called offer management. So I joined OpenJaw Technologies, and I was head of product strategy there for 9 years. And I did a lot of projects, one big ferry project, airline projects, a lot of dynamic packaging, holiday packaging, vacations, hotel, helped develop OpenJaw. One of the team developed an OpenJaw T-Retail platform. And then moved from there. I did a little bit of consulting for a couple of years in the area of digital customer experience for airlines. And then I joined Travelport, and then Travelport then got me a little bit back into the agency side of the world, so a bit more of an appreciation of what had changed on the agency side in the previous 10 years. Not much, as it turns out. And also, very interesting time to be in Travelport was we had the pandemic, but also we had the essentially the rebrand of Travelport and the launch of Travelport Plus as a kind of ultimately the merger of Galileo, WorldSpan, and Apollo into a single platform. So, yeah, very very educational period for me, and so in the end, I've gotten to see a little bit of every end of the business, from corporate travel management to OTAs to tour operators, vacation packaging, holiday packaging companies, all the way through to airline IT, system integration, P&Rs, PSS, res, inventory ops, all of that stuff. And I've managed to touch a little bit on all of those areas in my career. So when it came to the LinkedIn offer, one thing I think we have a challenge in this industry is that it's a little bit difficult for people with new ideas or startups or even cross-vertical tech companies. There's a whole bunch of work experience and fintech and expense tracking, for example, applications that want to edge into travel, and I think the travel industry benefits from that. So my offer on LinkedIn was basically, hey, I won't charge you anything. Come and talk to me, and I'll answer what questions I can, and I'll explain some of the terminology, right? But really, my aim is to sort of start from zero, get people to the level that they can start reading, the trade press and understand what they're reading. And while I was a consultant, I developed a Travel 101 training, and I sold that to multiple companies or a lot of the travel tech companies. So when they're hiring salespeople or they're hiring new engineers or new designers, so they can get a baseline understanding of the business. And then, when I joined Travelport, I continued to do that within Travelport for new hires as well. So it's kind of like I've always had that training angle. And the LinkedIn post was great for me. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy meeting new people. I enjoy explaining the travel industry. Sometimes it's embarrassing and quirky, and sometimes it's clever and ahead of any other sector. But I enjoy talking about it, and I'm not the only one, but there's a lot of people who are really trying to make the industry more transparent and more accessible to innovators and startups and cross-vertical tech companies, and I'm kind of one of the people who are trying to help with that.
It's so important. It's being an island does no one any favors, and as you are completely correct, there are so many new technology areas that are coming in, even from the basis of a marketing perspective, personalization software, just things that are not being innovated with internally.
Well, I want to challenge you on the being in Ireland not doing any favors thing, right? What I would say is, yes, it's a little bit damp, but the Irish have a great love of airplanes, and it's like a deep cultural thing. For a start, right? Something like 40% of the world's fleets are managed out of Dublin, right?
Yeah.
But because of the invention of aircraft leasing happened in Ireland. But you've had a long history of Westinghouse, Cara Computing, Aer Lingus, and then Ryanair Labs, Cartroller, Hostelworld, OpenJaw, Datalex. And now I've offended the 30 other companies I failed to mention. There's a big hub for travel tech and a long history for travel tech in Ireland. And of course, the Irish people, we're dispersed. We have a global diaspora, and sort of to remain connected to our families. There's a huge dependence on the airline industry to enable that.
Absolutely.
But interesting story. But to underpin the cultural point, it used to be when people, in the first half of the 20th century, when people would immigrate to America, you'd actually hold a funeral for them in Ireland, because the chances of you ever seeing those people again were so slim. It was called an American wake. It was kind of like a party and a funeral,
Yeah.
but the emergence of transatlantic flying and flying, even that didn't solve the problem, because it was also an economic problem, right? It wasn't really until the relative price of air tickets plunged in the 70s and 80s that suddenly, immigrating to America didn't have to become a permanent thing. You could go to America, you could come back, or you could visit once every year or every 2 years, and just a regular salary could afford to do that, right? So that kind of is there's like a deep, I think, connection between the Irish and the airline industry, and
I love that, and I think also just post pandemic, right? From a recruitment point of view, how
yeah,
people are hiring and how my clients and companies are seeing their workforce is so wildly different to even 10 years ago, and that
yeah.
is hugely driven from our industry. Is
Well, the diversity of the workforce is one of the attractions of this business. You get to work with people of all races and creeds, and all age brackets. I'm very lucky to have had lots of great bosses who were women. I think on balance, I prefer that now. But it was, and also, in Ireland, in Dublin in particular, there's probably not that many cities in the world where you can open up a contact center or a support center, and say, hire, people with 15, 16, 20 different native languages. In Dublin, you can do that, right? It's extraordinary. So I love it. I love that aspect of living in Dublin. I love that aspect of working in the airline industry as well.
Brilliant. It's so integral to everything. I mean, to go on from that, just the ability of the airline industry as a whole to enable workforce management to be remote, to just go for client meetings, or to companies globally to be able to have people located in a variety of different remotely at home in different countries is opened up and changed how companies are working.
I think, I like to say I was a digital nomad before it was cool, because that's when I started in the travel industry, I was working in the US, or I was working in the UK. When I say working in, I was visiting them and doing things there and staying for a couple of weeks. And then I'd go to South America, because you still needed to bring floppy disks to install your software. But I was doing all of that traveling, but that whole business model or that lifestyle was enabled really by the airline industry. And then what we've seen post pandemic is that there's certain types of travel that just don't happen anymore. On 2 occasions, I went to Honolulu from Dublin to meet Hawaiian Airlines. And on one occasion, I went to Brisbane to meet Virgin Australia. Now, would you do that in this day and age? No, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, the counterpoint to that, the growth of remote work and hybrid teams, and also the fact that people are now using the internet to collaborate so much more, has actually driven growth in the internal meetings travel, where every so often you'll want to get your team sort of face to face. So you'll want to do a workshop where there's whiteboards and everything else. So I think the patterns have changed a lot since the pandemic, but maybe the road warrior who goes to 6 different cities in 5 days for 1 hour and a half hour meetings, that probably doesn't exist anymore, because, half of those clients will just be annoyed at you for making them come into the office, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the point. The meetings for no reason have gone. the meetings, because you want to sit across from someone and it's out of finality of a contract, or there is a real reason for that.
It adds impact to the face-to-face
Yeah.
interactions. Then you can actually restrict them to what's impactful and meaningful and useful to be there.
And we can do everything else on Zoom or Teams, or there are a number of other options available, of course.
Yeah.
So keeping it wide. Okay, so an awesome journey through the travel industry. So what are you up to now? What's the current setup?
Yeah, so I mean, after 7 years at Travelport, I left primarily because I want to get more involved in, I suppose, the next stage in the evolution of the airline passenger services tech, right? So what I'm specializing in now is just consulting and advising tech companies in how they approach the market, how they position themselves, the ecosystem, their competitive environments, I suppose their pitch, their selling point, both to investors and to customers. That's more of the strategic end, all the way down to the tangible. I can help a tech company understand customer requirements. I can also help, the communication between the airline people and the tech people to understand the consequences. The way I like to put it, well, you've added a new product over here in the e-commerce stack, but the person has to show up to the airport, receive the product that they think they bought, and get on board the plane, right? So it's how do you make sure that everything crosses all of the silos, that if you do something here, it's also supported in the departure control system, the thing that runs the airport, right? So I've been exposed to enough of the back-end system integration and enough of the end-to-end customer journey work over the years that now I'm very good at spotting, well, this requirement is incomplete, or, even if, as a vendor, we're not developing those other pieces, there's always something you have to know about how that product gets delivered, right? So helping companies understand the full scope of the customer journey, even if they're only working on or focusing on one piece of it.
And the potential pitfalls or ripples that might happen of changing different things.
Yeah.
And
I know where a lot of the bodies are buried, or where the mines are in the minefield, right? You know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Amazing. And it's really great to work with someone like you, Mark, because you've seen so many different iterations of the different providers, right? So understanding the puzzle pieces is imperative to making sure the projects work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's a massive puzzle, which gets back to how do we make the industry more transparent to innovators and starters.
Well, we're going to do another. You have kindly committed to 2 of these podcasts. I'm holding you to it, Mark. Unfortunately, thank you so much. A bit of a myth buster. And
we can do an acronym bingo or something.
Acronym bingo episode for our next one. But
so you absolutely should talk to Paul Van Alphen as well about that. He's a great guy for acronym busting, and
love this.
I can name a few other people that I hope to have as collaborators, like Helen Millet and Rianne Van Schuur and so on. But I think we, as a group, we've all got, and then there was also the work I did with Travel Scrum and Gene Quinn and that team, just to, did a hackathon, created some training materials, as a volunteer force, we kind of, the energy sapped a little bit when the industry fully recovered and we all had to go back to our day jobs. But I think there are a group of people who really want to make this industry clearer.
Well, as a provider, and we discussed this, but as a provider to the industry, it's taken me nearly 20 years to understand, and also, is up to you as an individual to keep up to date with what's been going on, and there's loads of different media outlets, and it can be a bit of a minefield depending on what you're reading. So which is why
and sometimes you have to read between the lines.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The airline wants you to think about it one way. The agency wants to think you about a different way. The distributor wants to think the tech vendor. They've all got conflicting interests, and they all want to sort of position themselves. But like there's almost like there's a gap between understanding the basics to being able to read and parse the kind of typical trade press that I think we need to address.
As my old more teacher used to say, trust your source. So, or know your source, probably more to the thing. So we're moving into a new world of OOSD. We've had new revelations this week from the Amadeus and Air France KLM movement into that space, which is great.
What are they calling it? Moon.
Moon. I love it. Another acronym. Put it on the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I know. I spoke to a couple of people yesterday about it, and just exciting stuff. So the fourth new iteration of Airline to join the Amadeus sphere within the new world. So
that's the whole Nevio messaging really does seem to be resonating with airlines.
It does, absolutely.
But also Amadeus are kind of I don't want to get too much trouble with Amadeus, but they're kind of sort of where IBM was in the 1980s, right? You won't get fired for picking Amadeus. They're the safe bet. They're the default choice. And I think their reservations in inventory, or their PSS market share, if you look them up on T2RL, they're between Altea and Navitaire, they're at something like 45%, right?
Yes,
so they've really, they've swallowed the industry. Now, are there airlines worried about that? Absolutely, they are. They endlessly complain that we're creating a dangerously powerful vendor that will put us over the barrel. But then they complain about other airlines picking Amadeus, but then they go ahead and pick Amadeus, right? So credit to Amadeus for having the product that seems to be winning in that sector. But I think but I mean
constantly.
Yeah, Nevio. By Amadeus, Mosaic by Sabre, and then kind of like the OOSD offerings of companies like Datalex, Pros, Acelia with Farelogix, Flyer. I think at OpenJaw, of course. I think that this is the project I spoke about earlier. The big project for the next 5 years, 10 years. I'm not that much of a tech booster. I'd say realistically 15 years is how do we actually transition the airline tech out of, it's not actually a discussion of mainframe versus cloud, right? It's actually a discussion of how do you get away from these legacy data formats, right? So the issue isn't so much the PNR or the hardware that's running or the operating system or the development language. The issue is actually the data formats, how an airline talks to an airport, how an airline talks to another airline, how an airline talks to a distributor, especially sort of legacy distribution, GDS distribution, the volume of that today. All of those protocols, those languages, those data types, those documents that get transferred around are, they're text files, for want of a better word. They're a little bit structured, they're a little bit unstructured, but everything is reduced to codes, when an airline sends its availability, which is really the thing that determines what the price is right now, to the GDSs, to other airlines, all of their products, the terms and conditions, the attributes, whether there's Wi-Fi, whether it's refundable, the nice branded bundles, this is main cabin super extra plus. All of that gets reduced to one letter of the alphabet, right? The famous revenue booking designator. And that's not really, you want to be able to sort of say, I can have a extensible, digital, flexible system, right, where I can build a retail ready offer. So that, I can give this to an OTA, I can give this to a corporate booking tool, and they can put it on the display, and a consumer can understand it, and they know what they're buying, right? But everybody just, all of these different silos are talking to each other using this cryptic language, and then they have to all build up this picture. And hopefully the picture that comes out on the OTA is the picture that the airline wants to come out in the OTA and is an accurate description of the product. But it's not, it's held back, I think, by the legacy data formats, is the whole digital vision of how we want to expand and transform the digital experience of travel is held back by those legacy formats.
There's so many potential points of failure there. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird that we're distributing products by breaking the products into 3 pieces and sending them out through 3 different channels for the other side to put the product back together again, right? I mean, it's not fragile. I mean, you can say that for it. Like the I suppose the benefit of the old systems is that like they get old enough, they get calcified enough that although they're very difficult to change, they never crash, right? But it's at the same time, it kind of, that calcification really limits what you can do in terms of innovation, innovating new products and new forms of distribution and new ways of bundling and packaging products and new presentations of products to consumers.
Do you see the major restriction of transformation then being or is there an ability to run both at the same time whilst doing transformation, or are they interlinked? Can you switch on to whatever the new version is whilst? Well,
you cannot actually just go all on to the new version, right? Now, it's maybe theoretically possible, right? But if you're a sort of a complex network airline, right, you're going to have a lot of complexities that have built up over time. You're selling multiple branded fare bundles across multiple cabin classes in multiple channels, direct and indirect. You've got agency agreements. You've got fulfillment at different airports, and if you're flying to an airport 3 times a week, well, you probably don't have any employees, full-time employees there. You're dependent on a ground handler. You don't even quite often get a choice of, every airline has a preferred departure control system, right, which is heavily integrated with their reservation system, and that helps deliver a consistent experience in the airport. But quite often they don't get a choice. They're working off their preferred departure control system in 80% of their airports, but a whole bunch of these, the fringes of their network, they're living in different tech environments, so they have to integrate those. If they co-share, if they interline with or without co-share with another airline, right? You're talking about being able to sell another airline seats as part of your ticket. That's a lot of integration. So as an airline, really, I think some of the low-cost, point-to-point, limited geography carriers have a lot more control of the scope and control of their destiny, and they can maybe innovate faster, right? But it's for a traditional network carrier, you kind of, in a lot of things, you're moving at the pace of the slowest, right? It's no point being fully offer, order, all modern, no PNRs, no tickets, no filed fares, right? You won't ever get there until the last partner that you're interlining with you is also there, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lot like the e-ticket project. I think that took 12, 13 years. It accelerated at the end. But, the reason it took so long, it's things like, airports having reliable network connections. It's things like, you have a complex network of this airline, it connects with this airline connects with this airline connects with that airline, and the airline, down at the little airline down at the very end of the chain doesn't support e-tickets, then you have to do a paper ticket. As long as there's some percentage of your bookings where you still need to create a PNR, or you still need to do what's called edifacts, which is that kind of communication protocol between host systems. As long as you need to do some of that, then you need all of that capability. So you're maintaining that capability and the new stuff in parallel.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a problem for the industry for 10 years. I mean, there's maybe some approach. Maybe there's a translation layer. I think T2RL and a few others have hypothesized that this could exist, that it's offer and orders on one side and it's PNRs and tickets on the other, and you only create a PNR when you need to. But I still think, as an industry, right? I know there are companies with products out there, but as an industry, we're 5 to 10 years away from really adopting all of that.
Well, there you go. We've got a lot of work to do.
But yes, it's exciting. Absolutely.
And actually, having come back to the industry 10 years, I had a little bit of a break, obviously, over everything that was happening, went into a couple of different markets. Coming back, players like Flyer, Pro, like all of these kind of new innovation-y type businesses are coming in and really trying to challenge. And I think that can only be a really positive thing to circle from the beginning.
And look, I mean, my conversations with those companies going back 10 years, right? I mean, even 10 years ago, just Fairlogix, Pros, and some of these other companies had this vision that there's, like if we connect all the dots here, revenue management for pricing, a product catalog to manage capacity and inventory in a modern way, dynamic bundling, offer management, API, e-commerce. There is a version of this where if you build all of this, well, do we need this stuff underneath? The reservations, the inventory, the old school, the PNRs, the tickets. So a lot of people, and I used to go in and we draw the whiteboard of the full scope, just to try and explore, well, what are you going for next? What's your strategy here? And I would always say, well, if you actually do all of these things, you can delete these things. And they would say, yeah, I mean, that's the plan. So even before, IATA one order or offer order service deliver, there was this shared vision in the industry of what like this all modern, all digital new platform would look like without a dependency on the legacy formats, right? So we've had that vision for a long time, I think.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you can help them form some of this picture of what's going to happen and assist some of the companies coming into the industry.
Yeah.
And I can help them find all the people to make it happen.
I hope so.
We'll come at it from both angles. Excellent. Well, Mark, I've just got a couple of quick fire questions just at the end to try and just allow everybody to understand you a little bit more.
Okay.
So
I'm dreading this bit. I have watched a few of these now, so I have some answers prepared.
And I've got a list, and I'll just pick them randomly as well. So, and Awara refused to do it with me, so I'll catch you off guard. So, what is the favourite piece of tech or an app that you're using at the moment?
Well, my wife bought me a Remarkable for Christmas, so it has replaced my pen and paper notes.
Oh, nice.
I'm still 50-50 on it, to be honest. In a way, it's kind of like I miss the tactile piece. In another way, it's like it is ultimately like I would get to the end of notebooks, I would maybe go back to notes 3 or 4 times in a week, and then they would never be seen again. But by creating that sort of persistent digital record, I'm assuming it will unlock efficiencies, but it's there maybe. I mean, the other thing I wanted to mention was Revolut Business, because the last time I incorporated a limited company, registered for VAT and tax and all of that stuff, and got a bank account. That was the old school way of doing it, and this time I've done the old digital way of doing it, and wow,
And
right?
it's really,
Like I used to, the last time, which wasn't that long ago. I mean, it was 9 years ago.
yeah.
I had to show up to a physical branch twice with like, my parents' birth certs and my articles of incorporation and all this. Yeah, and now it's like, oh, take a photo, look to the left, look to the right, scan your passport, and they're sort of, tell us your registration number, and then they go to the company's registration office and validate that you're a director of the company that's setting up the bank account. And there's bits of it that are it's not all digital. It's all digital user interface, and it's really, really easy UI design, and it's everything that digital transformation should be. There's clearly some checks and balances going on in the back end, because there's certain things that it doesn't happen in 5 seconds. It happens in 4 or 5 hours, right? So there's a support center somewhere reviewing the documents, and that's fine. It gives you a little bit of confidence in it as well. But like, it's just that end-to-end experience is so transformative versus traditional banking. I can see why the banks are afraid of being disrupted by this kind of technology.
There's some banking disruption, absolutely. Well, It's lovely to hear that, because they've had a bit of a bad rep recently, and everybody has a few bumps in the road. But I'm pleased to hear that you're a good advocate for them. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I'd actually use their travel insurance product, because I don't really understand what it is. But the banking product is it's just a great user experience.
Good. Are you to be found in the disco, or you're at a restaurant?
Restaurant. I'm not a dancer. And if I'm staying up late, it's to talk to people over a beer or a wine. Nice. It's never to dance and party in that sense.
Excellent. What's your favourite food?
I've been thinking about this, right? I maintain from my trips to Mexico, and I maintain that anyone who has spent a reasonable amount of time in Mexico and other parts of the world will ultimately come to the conclusion that Mexican food is the best food in the world. You might not agree with me, but if you haven't had Mexican food in Mexico, you don't actually get what the thing there is. And the thing there is that even the cheapest, fastest, simplest food has a minimum quality level culturally in Mexico that you just don't see in any other country. Wow. So for me, it was like the tacos al pastor, in Mexico City was just. Now there's one or. I love French food. I love Italian food. I love Japanese food. I love Chinese food. I love the food of any country I go to. But I just, I'd have to go with the Mexican.
Love that. And last but not least, if you had a superpower, what would it be and why?
Well, I've been thinking, flying, obviously, but I know that people have said like, would I like to be able to cure people's disease and solve global warming and world hunger? Yeah, I mean, but they're not comic book superpowers. They're, what would I do if I was a god? So to respect the question, I think it would be flying. But then, how would I stay warm and keep bugs out of my face? And then I think, what would be better actually is just to teleport. Like the teleporter gun in the Portal video game. I could just like make a little portal and walk through and pop out in New York. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Which is a bad thing for a travel tech airline person to say. Like, I wish you guys didn't exist. I just want the destination. I don't want the journey.
Well, we still love them. them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is in dreamland only. But Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rachel, for having me. It's been fun.
A real pleasure. Just running through stuff with you. You've had quite the journey, and I'm really looking forward to hearing how things go in the modern retailing world looking forward. So we shall keep in touch, and just for our listeners to come back, and we will record our lingo busting episode next. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we can get that done. And
looking forward to that.
Cool. Okay, thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, Rachel. Bye for now. All right.